Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us on the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most astonishing and mind-bending stories in the world of rare coins, a story that keeps collectors awake at night and sends treasure hunters scrambling to check every old jar, drawer, and attic box they can find. Because we're talking about the legendary 1984 1-cent coin that has been estimated by some collectors and speculative circles to be worth as much as $17 million due to its bizarre assortment of errors, minting anomalies, unusual production quirks, and the extraordinary sequence of events that might have allowed such a flawed yet incredibly special coin to slip through the cracks of mint inspection, creating a perfect storm of rarity, desirability, and mystery that fuels both numismatic passion and financial speculation. And the more we look into what can make a coin like this so unbelievably valuable, the more fascinating the story becomes as we peel back the layers of minting processes, human oversight, mechanical malfunction, unexpected die behavior, metal inconsistencies, strike oddities, and the strange chain of improbabilities that can cause an everyday penny to transform into one of the most valuable tiny pieces of metal on the planet. So let's explore the possible errors, the hypothetical mistakes, the historical circumstances, the variations in mint production, and the ways a single coin can end up possessing such a monumental status among collectors who chase after these numismatic unicorns with almost mythic devotion, starting with the idea that a 1984 penny might contain the kind of dramatic minting mistakes that push it beyond ordinary rarity and into the realm of astronomical value, because the minting process involves a complex interplay of machinery, dies, planchets, pressure, temperature, and human oversight, and any deviation, no matter how subtle, can create a unique coin, and when multiple deviations stack on top of one another, such as double dies combined with off-center strikes, misaligned dies, die cracks, cuds, lamination errors, clipped planchets, improper alloy mixes, or transitional metal compositions, the resulting coin sometimes becomes not merely rare but almost impossibly unique, especially if it's traced to circumstances involving machinery being recalibrated, dies being replaced, presses malfunctioning, or even employees catching mistakes just a second too late. And one of the most frequently discussed possibilities behind the mythical multi-million-dollar 1984 1-cent coin lies in the notion of an extreme double die, far beyond the already well-known 1984 double-deer Lincoln cent, which is valuable but nowhere near the range we are discussing here, because collectors speculate about the existence of a never-confirmed but theoretically possible ultra-double die that would show dramatic doubling across multiple design elements: Lincoln's profile, his ear, the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and the reverse lettering, creating an almost psychedelic effect under magnification, something so visually obvious and so unmistakably dramatic that it would stand out immediately to even a novice collector. And if such an extreme example existed, especially struck early in the die's life before deterioration softened the doubling, it could create a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of unintentional mint art that collectors would treat like the holy grail of modern American coinage. But doubling alone cannot explain a $17 million valuation, so we delve deeper into the idea of compound errors, like imagining that the coin was struck on a transitional or foreign planchet, because in some years planchets from other denominations or countries accidentally end up in the wrong bins. And if a 1984 penny were struck on a bronze planchet from an earlier era or on a foreign copper alloy with the wrong weight, wrong thickness, or incorrect metallic composition, that alone would add enormous value. And when combined with dramatic doubling, it could push the coin's rarity into historic territory. And even beyond such metal composition errors, we enter the realm of spectacular striking mishaps, such as an off-center strike so dramatic that part of the design is missing but enough of the date and key features remain to positively identify the coin. Because highly off-center coins can be valuable, especially when the date is fully visible. But imagine combining this with double dies, with planchet errors, with die cracks that create raised lines across the coin, and with possible rotated dies that twist the obverse and reverse out of alignment by 40, 50, or even 90 degrees, creating a surreal and visually striking misalignment that collectors would instantly recognize as something extraordinarily special. And the coin's uniqueness could be further enhanced by hypothesized mint stage environmental anomalies, such as improper annealing, where the metal planchet fails to heat and cool properly, resulting in unusual coloration, strange surface texture, or microscopic crystalline structures that numismatic metallurgists would examine with astonishment, and if the coin somehow escaped destruction despite being so flawed, either because inspectors missed it during busy production runs, or because it was struck during a shift change, or because the mint was running at full speed to meet production quotas and overlooked an anomaly, or even because the coin was carried out unintentionally by a worker, it would only deepen its mystique. And another layer of value comes from provenance, because if the coin surfaced from an old family collection, forgotten for decades, only to be rediscovered accidentally, this rediscovery narrative itself can elevate its appeal, creating a story that spreads among collectors like wildfire and intensifies bidding wars at auctions, where wealthy collectors compete fiercely for ownership of coins that combine historical intrigue with undeniable rarity. And when a coin accumulates layers of narrative, anomaly, and impossibility, its value can skyrocket beyond traditional numismatic logic. And here we must consider how a coin could possibly achieve a valuation of $17 million, which is a sum usually reserved for world-famous rarities like the 1933 double eagle or unique historical gold patterns, yet collectors sometimes attempt to extrapolate the potential value of a modern coin with extreme and unmatched errors, arguing that because modern minting standards make dramatic multi-error coins almost impossible, any coin that achieved such a level of uniqueness would stand entirely alone in the universe of coinage, the sole surviving example of its kind, and the scarcity factor would no longer be rare, but singular, and singular objects, especially when authenticated, graded at a high level, and accompanied by extensive documentation, can fetch extraordinary valuations. Because once something becomes one of one, the market is limited only by how far wealthy collectors are willing to go, and when collectors imagine the 1984 penny with a perfect storm of errors, multiple doubling, extreme off-center striking, rotated dies, planchet contamination, improper alloy, lamination peels, retained cuds, raised die cracks forming lightning-like patterns, brockage impressions where one face bears a mirrored imprint of another coin, and even multi-strike anomalies where the coin receives 2 or 3 separate partial impressions, they begin to picture a coin so unusual that it transcends normal collecting and becomes a kind of numismatic icon, a coin whose appearance is instantly unforgettable and whose existence defies the mint's quality control protocols, making it an object of obsession for collectors, investors, historians, and even casual enthusiasts who marvel at how such a flawed piece could turn into a priceless artifact. And when you combine rarity with beauty, because dramatic errors can be aesthetically appealing in their own chaotic way, you get a coin that sparks bidding battles, attracts media attention, fuels online speculation, and generates stories of legendary finds, with people imagining themselves stumbling upon such a treasure in pocket change or an old roll of pennies. And the allure of that possibility drives the excitement behind stories of multimillion-dollar modern errors, drawing more people into the hobby, all checking their 1984 pennies, comparing details, searching for doubling, inspecting for subtle anomalies, hoping that they too might one day uncover an unimaginable prize. And although most 1984 pennies will be perfectly ordinary, the thrill of the search is part of what sustains the legend, because collectors understand that extraordinary coins are born not from ordinary circumstances but from rare moments when machinery, timing, oversight, metallurgy, and luck all align in ways that seem almost magical. And it is this combination of magic, improbability, and tangible historical mystery that transforms a single tiny coin into something that people imagine could be worth not just thousands or hundreds of thousands but millions upon millions of dollars, because in the world of numismatics, value is not just about metal, it is about rarity, storytelling, authenticity, aesthetic uniqueness, collector passion, and the irresistible human drive to chase what is elusive. And this is why the idea of a 1984 penny valued at $17 million continues to captivate minds, inspire treasure hunters, spark debates, and elevate the humble 1-cent piece into a symbol of possibility. Next, 1995 D 1-cent coin. Today, as we dive into one of the most fascinating, surprising, and almost unbelievable stories in the world of rare coins, because in this video we're going to explore how a simple 1995 D 1-cent coin, something most people would overlook in their pocket change, could skyrocket to a jaw-dropping value of $10 million due to a remarkable combination of minting errors, mechanical mishaps, material anomalies, and the intriguing possibilities that make certain coins not only rare but almost mythical in the eyes of collectors. And as we walk through this deep dive, you'll discover why this humble penny, often dismissed as the lowest denomination of United States currency, has become the center of massive attention among enthusiasts, appraisers, and historians who understand that the true value of any coin comes not just from its face value but from its origin, its production history, the unusual imperfections that occurred in the mint, and the chain of events that turned an ordinary zinc-based piece of currency into something considered a potential multi-million-dollar treasure. So settle in as we unravel all the elements that make this extraordinary coin so captivating, starting with why the 1995 date matters and why the Denver Mint's production environment during that year created conditions under which rare anomalies could occur that have stunned the collecting community and continue to generate speculation, debate, and excitement even decades later. Because 1995 was a major year for penny production in the United States, with billions of coins rolling out of the presses, and while most of those coins were perfectly ordinary, a very small number exhibited irregularities that would go largely unnoticed by the general public but instantly sparked curiosity among experienced numismatists who understood that errors involving doubling, misalignment, off-metal strikes, die deterioration, and planchet contamination were becoming more common due to the aging equipment and the immense pressure on the mint to produce high volumes of currency quickly. And among these error coins, the alleged ultra-rare 1995 D1 cent that could command a price as high as $10 million stands out because of its combination of multiple overlapping mistakes, each one rare on its own but nearly unheard of when appearing together on a single example, leading experts to believe that if a coin exists with all the characteristics that have been described in collector discussions, it would be one of the most valuable coins in American history, rivaling even iconic rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle or the 1913 Liberty Nickel. And to understand why this potential 1995 penny could command such a massive sum, we have to break down the types of errors that may be present on it and why each type is significant. Starting with one of the most dramatic possibilities, a double die obverse of an extremely bold and unmistakable nature, meaning that during the hubbing process the design was impressed twice on the die but with a slight shift between impressions, creating visible doubling on the lettering, the date, and perhaps even Lincoln's profile. And while double dies are not unheard of in U.S. minting history, the intensity of doubling required to propel a coin's value into the multi-million-dollar range would need to be extraordinary, comparable to or surpassing the famous 1955 double die cent, which already commands enormous value. And then consider the possibility that the 1995 example in question could also exhibit a rotated die error, meaning that one of the dies was misaligned relative to the other, causing the reverse to appear rotated significantly when compared to the obverse. And such dramatic rotations are extremely rare in modern minting because of stricter quality control procedures. But when they do occur, they become highly desirable, especially in combination with other anomalies. And if that wasn't enough, imagine a coin that also shows a broad strike or off-center strike, something that happens when the coin is not properly seated within the collar during minting, causing it to expand outward or become partially incomplete in a way that dramatically alters its shape without rendering it unrecognizable, making it an error that collectors find visually striking and undeniably unique. And then add to that the possibility of planchet contamination, meaning that the metal blank used to create the penny was irregular in composition, perhaps containing traces of foreign metals or showing unusual textures or coloration due to improper alloy mixing or exposure to contaminants in the facilities where blanks were stored. And since pennies in 1995 were made of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, any deviation in this structure could cause blistering, peeling, cracking, or unusual surface patterns that in extreme cases become extremely desirable to error specialists, especially when such anomalies occur on a coin that already features multiple other mistakes, turning it into a one-of-a-kind specimen. And now imagine combining all of these possibilities into a single coin, a coin that could show strong double die characteristics, a dramatic die rotation, a strikingly off-center or broad-struck shape, evidence of improper planchet composition or lamination, and perhaps even minor die cracks, die chips, or clash marks where the dies struck each other without a planchet. between them, leaving ghost-like impressions of reverse elements on the obverse or vice versa, and when you put all these factors together you begin to understand why the theoretical maximum value of such a coin could soar into the realm of $10 million, because numismatic value is not just about rarity, but about uniqueness, historical significance, and the appeal of a dramatic story that accompanies the coin. And in this case, the story is especially appealing because the 1995 production run was not known for any single catastrophic failure that would make widespread errors probable, meaning that if such an extreme error coin exists, it would not be the result of a large batch mistake but rather a fleeting moment, perhaps lasting only seconds, when machinery malfunctioned in a perfect storm of mechanical failures and human oversight, creating a coin that slipped through unnoticed in a sea of billions and only decades later emerges as a legendary artifact. And collectors are always drawn to these one-in-a-billion possibilities because they represent the thrill of discovery, the idea that a priceless treasure might still be sitting in someone's drawer, jar, or forgotten coffee can filled with random change, and that potential is what gives coins like the rumored 1995 $10 million penny their mystique, inspiring countless searches of pocket change and estate collections, driving discussions among experts, and fueling speculation about whether the perfect combination of rare errors truly exists in a single surviving example. And another factor that intensifies the potential value of such a coin is the historical context of the mid-1990s minting process, a time when the U.S. Mint was transitioning between older equipment and newer systems, dealing with increasingly heavy production demands while also navigating budget constraints that affected maintenance schedules, all of which could create brief but consequential windows in which errors slipped through, especially at the Denver Mint, which was known for its massive output and where even a momentary lapse could result in thousands of coins being struck before an error was detected. And while most of those coins would be caught and destroyed, it's always possible that one or two exceptional specimens made it into circulation, and those are the kinds of coins that eventually become legends, gaining mythical status in collector circles. And when you consider the psychology of collecting, the value can grow exponentially, because when something is believed to exist but is extremely hard to confirm, the anticipation alone increases demand, and if a physical example is ever authenticated with all the theorized characteristics intact, the bidding war among elite collectors, museums, and private investors could easily escalate to unprecedented levels, pushing the coin's value into eight-figure territory simply because owning such an object represents the pinnacle of achievement within the hobby, a symbol of rarity so immense that even the most prestigious coin collections in the world would envy it. And this emotional component cannot be underestimated because rare coins have long been treated not merely as collectibles but as historical artifacts and alternative investments, objects whose value is tied to narrative, provenance, and cultural significance, meaning that even a small copper-plated zinc penny from 1995, when combined with a series of remarkable errors, can take on meaning far greater than its modest physical form, becoming a representation of chance, history, mechanical imperfection, and the enduring human fascination with hidden treasure. And the idea that an everyday object can transform into something worth millions is a powerful reminder that the world of coins is full of surprises, and that even in modern times, when minting technology is more precise than ever, there remains room for the unexpected, because machines are not infallible and the minting process involves countless variables, any of which can go wrong in a split second, and when they do, and when the resulting error is dramatic enough to survive mint supervision, the outcome is something that captivates the imagination of collectors around the globe. Next, 1991 1 cent. Today we're exploring the unbelievable tale of the 1991 1-cent coin that some enthusiasts, speculative collectors, and numismatic dreamers claim could be worth an eye-watering $13 million due to an extraordinary cluster of potential minting errors, mechanical anomalies, metallurgical irregularities, oversight mishaps, and mysterious circumstances that, when woven together, create a perfect storm of uniqueness, rarity, improbability, and historical intrigue. The kind that pushes a simple penny from ordinary pocket change into the realm of mythical treasure. And the truly fascinating thing about this particular story is how a coin minted in a year when technology and production processes were supposed to be more reliable, more standardized, and more strictly monitored than ever before could somehow slip through with a cascade of errors dramatic enough to make it one of the most coveted small metal discs ever rumored to exist, so let's unravel layer after layer of what might make a 1991 penny worth such a staggering fortune, starting with the core idea that any coin reaching into the multi-million-dollar value range must combine not just one or two mistakes but several extremely rare and possibly unprecedented minting anomalies all occurring on the same planchet, because modern-era coins are expected to be nearly flawless thanks to precise machinery, laser-aligned dies, updated quality control protocols, and advanced metallurgy, which means that when a coin does emerge with dramatic errors, especially a combination of errors that should be virtually impossible, collectors lose their minds with excitement, since the more improbable the error stack, the more remarkable the survival of the coin, and the more passionate collectors become in their desire to own it, driving speculative valuations into the stratosphere. And so one of the first possibilities numismatists imagine when dreaming about a multi-million-dollar 1991 penny is an ultra-dramatic double die, far beyond not only normal doubling but even beyond the well-documented major double dies from other years, something displaying extreme, unmistakable, dramatic spreading across multiple design elements, Lincoln's profile, the date, the motto, the lettering, the bow tie, the hair details, and potentially even the reverse memorial structure. An effect so vivid that even a casual observer would notice it immediately without magnification, and if such doubling appeared early in the die's life, before we're softened the details, the coin could stand out as a unique masterpiece of unintended mint artistry, a coin so visually striking that collectors would instantly recognize its rarity, but doubling alone cannot carry a $13 million price tag, so people imagine this double die occurring on a wildly unexpected planchet, such as a transitional composition planchet not intended for circulation that year, because 1991 pennies should be copper-plated zinc. Yet the accidental presence of a solid bronze planchet left over from pre-1982 production runs, or a foreign coin blank of a very similar diameter but completely different alloy, would make the coin a huge outlier, especially if it carried a weight inconsistent with its year, because composition errors are among the most prized mistakes in coin collecting, and when double die anomalies and planchet anomalies intersect, rarity multiplies to an astonishing degree, but this is only one layer of the complex structure of errors that enthusiasts imagine, because when you add in the possibility of dramatic off-center striking, perhaps an error in which the design shifted so far that a large crescent of blank metal appears while still preserving the full date, making it identifiable, the coin becomes even more visually extraordinary, since off-center errors combined with double dies and incorrect planchets create a kind of numismatic trifecta that virtually guarantees intense collector competition. And then we consider rotated dies, a situation where the obverse and reverse are twisted so significantly out of alignment that flipping the coin reveals a reversed image that is swiveled by 40, 90, or even 180 degrees, a condition extremely rare in modern minting due to improved machinery, but still theoretically possible if a press malfunctioned or if a die was improperly secured during maintenance, which raises the speculative thrill of imagining a 1991 penny with a spectacular die rotation on top of all its other imagined flaws, and then the drama intensifies even further when collectors dream about errors like brockages, where a previously struck coin gets jammed into the die and leaves a mirrored impression on the next planchet, causing a ghost-like duplicate image on one side of the coin, something both eerie and mesmerizing to look at, and if this brockage were partial, combining a brockage with an off-center strike, doubling, planchet irregularities, and rotated dies, the result would be a one-of-a-kind marvel that defies imagination and feels almost impossible, yet numismatics thrives on the impossible, because the intersection of mechanical unpredictability and human oversight sometimes leads to miracles of error production, and then we enter the territory of dramatic die cracks, cuds, and die breaks, where pieces of the die itself break off during striking, leaving raised, jagged metal lines or blob-like protrusions on the coin, and if a massive die crack formed a dramatic lightning-shaped flaw across Lincoln's portrait, or if a cud swallowed part of the lettering or date, collectors would go wild, because large cuds are rare enough on their own, but when combined with extreme doubling and planchet errors, the finished coin would be breathtakingly unusual, and we cannot ignore laminated planchet errors either. Those strange situations where part of the thin copper plating on a zinc penny peels away or was improperly bonded, revealing dramatic tears, flakes, or surface textures that give the coin an almost battle-scarred appearance, and if the lamination error appeared along with doubling, die cracks, and rotation, it would give the coin a unique aesthetic that would immediately stand out under examination. And then we consider the possibility of multiple strikes, because sometimes a coin can be struck twice, 3 times, or even more, due to mechanical malfunction or a planchet failing to eject properly before the next strike, causing overlapping impressions that make the design look chaotic, fractured, and mesmerizing. And if those multiple strikes occurred in different orientations, each slightly rotated or offset, they would amplify the visual drama into something so extraordinary that even top-tier grading services would marvel at the coin's existence. And imagine if the coin were struck with 2 different dies entirely, one for the obverse from one die pair and a reverse from another die pair, an event extremely rare in modern mints but not impossible if dies were being changed or adjusted in the middle of a production run, because mismatched dies create an instant rarity due to the combination being both accidental and unlikely to be repeated, especially in a year like 1991 when mint security and consistency were tighter than ever. And then we move into even more exotic hypothetical scenarios, such as the coin being part of an experimental minting test, perhaps involving a trial alloy or a prototype plating mixture that was never released into circulation but somehow escaped destruction. And if this experimental planchet combined with a double die, off-center strike, and rotated reverse, the result would be a coin not only rare but historically significant, a piece of mint experimentation that collectors would spend fortunes to own because it represents a chapter of mint history that was never meant to be public. And then consider the possibility of an environmental mint error, such as improper annealing, where the metal was heated and cooled incorrectly, resulting in unusual coloration, crystalline surface structures, or tonal irregularities that metallurgists would find puzzling and collectors would find beautiful, especially if the discoloration appeared naturally at the mint rather than after circulation. And when you add provenance, the idea that this coin might have been discovered decades later in an old estate collection, perhaps tucked inside a box with other coins but unnoticed until someone recognized its impossible combination of features, the story becomes even bigger, because collectors love coins with mysterious backstories, and they love coins that emerge unexpectedly and rewrite assumptions about what kinds of errors could occur in modern minting. And when a coin is believed to be possibly unique, possibly unmatched, possibly the only surviving example of a cascade of minting failures that should not have occurred in 1991 under any circumstances, the speculative value explodes, because in numismatics, uniqueness is the highest form of rarity, and when an item is one of one, buyers with deep pockets sometimes push prices into realms that seem absurd to outsiders but make perfect sense to passionate collectors. And so the mythical $13 million 1991 penny endures as a symbol of what is possible when machinery malfunctions at the exact wrong, or depending on your perspective, the exact right moment, when inspectors miss a coin that doesn't belong, when a planchet goes where it shouldn't, when dies break in spectacular fashion, when strikes overlap or shift or rotate. Last 1997 1-cent coin. Today, as we dive into one of the most incredible, fascinating, and downright unbelievable stories in the entire world of rare coins, because in this video we're exploring how a seemingly ordinary 1997 1-cent coin, the small copper-plated zinc penny that most of us barely notice as it jingles around in our pockets, could reach an astonishing value of $13 million, a number so huge for a coin like this that it almost sounds imaginary until you begin to understand how the presence of highly unusual minting errors, mechanical malfunctions, die failures, planchet anomalies, and rare combinations of mistakes can turn a simple piece of change into a staggering multi-million-dollar treasure. And as we take this journey together, you'll discover why the 1997 penny in particular has become the subject of so much speculation, excitement, and intrigue within the numismatic community, because while billions of cents were produced that year across different United States mint facilities, only the tiniest imaginable fraction might contain the extraordinary sequence of overlapping errors that could justify a value this immense, and collectors worldwide are always eager to hear about rare error coins, especially when those coins emerge from what should have been a routine, unremarkable minting year like 1997. A year when the mint was producing coins at incredible volume while updating and maintaining equipment that was already under heavy workload from the economic demands of the decade, creating the conditions for unusual and sometimes extreme minting mistakes to slip through, and although most of these errors would be minor or caught before the coins could leave the facilities, there exists the possibility that one extraordinary penny made it into circulation or remained undiscovered in storage. A coin exhibiting such a rare and dramatic array of flaws that it could be valued in the 8-figure range, and that is exactly the mystery that has captivated so many collectors who continue to search through jars, rolls, and forgotten drawers in hopes of finding the legendary 1997 cent that could fetch $13 million, and as we explore this story we're going to consider all the types of errors that could contribute to such a valuation, starting with one of the most desirable and visually striking possibilities, a double die obverse, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives more than one impression from the hub, but at slightly different angles or positions, producing clear doubling on the lettering, the numbers of the date, and even in Lincoln's portrait. And although double die cents exist in other years, the idea of a 1997 example with extreme doubling is one of the features collectors imagine when speculating about a coin that could surpass 7 or 8 figures in value, especially if the doubling is bold and dramatic enough to be visible without magnification, because such clarity amplifies desirability. And now imagine this double die sitting on a coin that also exhibits a second major error, such as a significant off-center strike, where the planchet was not positioned correctly between the dies during striking, causing the design to be shifted so far to one side that part of the coin is missing design elements entirely, with a crescent-shaped blank area taking up a noticeable portion of the surface. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, extreme off-center strikes combined with double die features are exceedingly rare, and when such combinations occur, each layer of rarity multiplies the coin's value exponentially, especially if both sides of the coin show evidence of the off-center strike without destroying the clarity of the doubled elements. And then consider the possibility that the 1997 penny in question could also display a broad strike error, which occurs when the retaining collar fails, allowing the coin to expand outward wider than normal instead of being constrained to the standard diameter. And a broad strike combined with an off-center strike and a double die is the kind of unprecedented trifecta that experts describe as the perfect storm of minting anomalies, and any such coin would instantly be recognized as something extraordinary, and this is before we even factor in the possibility of die caps, partial collar strikes, or even double strikes, which happen when a coin is struck once but fails to eject properly and is struck again, creating overlapping or ghosted images that collectors find mesmerizing and highly valuable. And imagine if this hypothetical $1 million 1997 penny received a second strike completely misaligned with the first, creating two visible impressions of Lincoln's profile and two layers of text that cross, distort, or blend in striking ways. And such dramatic errors can elevate a coin's rarity to the point where its value skyrockets beyond what anyone might initially expect from a modern 1-cent piece. But we're still only scratching the surface, because another key element that could make a 1997 penny worth $13 million is a wrong-planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on a blank meant for another denomination. And although this might seem unlikely, the mint produces blanks for many denominations in the same facility, and rare mix-ups have occurred throughout history, leading to fascinating and extremely valuable wrong-planchet coins. So imagine a 1997 penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that is too small, too light, and silver-colored. Or even more astonishing, imagine it being struck on a foreign coin planchet or an obsolete alloy, resulting in a piece that is visually different from any standard penny and immediately identifiable as a mint error of monumental significance. And these wrong-planchet errors are already highly valuable even without additional mistakes, but when combined with major doubling, off-center striking, multiple strikes, or other mechanical errors, the rarity compounds dramatically, making the coin not just rare, but genuinely unique in the world. And now add the possibility of lamination errors caused by impurities in the planchet's metal composition, leading the surface to peel, crack, or bubble in ways that reveal internal layers of zinc or faults in the copper plating. And while minor laminations are relatively common, an extreme lamination error combined with multiple other rare features creates a coin that collectors would consider priceless. And on top of that, imagine die cracks and die chips, tiny raised lines or blobs of metal resulting from fractures in the working dies, forming unusual shapes on the coin, such as lines across Lincoln's face, chips in the lettering, or breaks around the rim, and collectors especially prize die cracks that form recognizable patterns. And when these appear on a coin already exhibiting multiple major errors, its appeal becomes unparalleled. And now picture all these possibilities converging on a single coin, a 1997 1-cent piece struck on the wrong planchet, featuring an extreme double die obverse, displaying dramatic off-center placement, showing evidence of a broad strike or partial collar strike, potentially being struck twice or even 3 times with misaligned impressions, presenting cracked or split plating, revealing lamination faults, and containing visible die cracks or chips that add further uniqueness. And when you combine these factors not hypothetically but realistically, because minting conditions in the late 1990s were transitional and capable of producing such anomalies, you begin to understand why collectors believe a perfect storm coin like this could theoretically reach $13 million or more if discovered, authenticated, and brought to auction. Because rarity is not simply about how few examples exist but about how few could ever exist given the nature of the mistakes and the minting environment of the time. And the 1997 production year offers a fascinating backdrop for such possibilities, because the mint was producing enormous quantities of pennies while also phasing equipment in and out for upgrades, meaning older dies were sometimes used longer than intended, and wear and tear on these dies could lead to unusual deterioration patterns, including dramatic doubling, die breaks, and misalignments that would normally be caught early but could escape detection during busy production shifts, allowing extraordinary error coins to slip out into circulation unnoticed. And this idea fuels collectors' imaginations because a truly unique error coin is not just a collectible object but a historical artifact representing a moment of mechanical chaos within a highly regimented industrial process, a moment that left behind a physical trace that outlived the machinery, the workers, and even the era in which it occurred. And when that trace takes the form of a coin with multiple rare anomalies interacting in visually stunning and unprecedented ways, its value becomes not just monetary but symbolic, embodying the unpredictable nature of minting and the endless potential for extraordinary discoveries hidden among the billions of coins in circulation. And this sense of possibility is precisely what drives the excitement around the idea of a 1997 penny worth $13 million, because even though such a coin would be astronomically rare, the fact remains that rare coins do exist, and extraordinary error coins have been discovered in the most unexpected places, from pocket change to inherited collections to unsearched bank rolls that had sat untouched for decades.